This time I'd like to call the May 8th, 2012 Planning Board meeting to order. The first item on our agenda are minutes from April 24th. Mr. Secretary.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the minutes from the April 24th meeting with amendments from the board members.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstain. Motion carries. These are mine. I just have some minor. The next item on the agenda is a public hearing, and for those of you that are in the audience, the procedures for the public hearing are on the back of the agenda.
Excuse me, Ralph. Sorry, we do have one A&R.
Oh, excuse me. I checked it off and didn't even say anything. My apologies. The next item on the agenda is an approval not required. Is there someone here for the, let's see, there are no particulars about the A&R on the agenda, just, at least on mine. Let's see.
No,
Because it just came in.
it came in before May 8th, but it came in after the agenda was posted.
Okay,
So it's that top plan right there.
okay.
If you want to just read the applicant's name.
The applicant is John R. Bursey.
W. Bushy.
John W. Bursey, excuse me. Is there someone here for the applicant? Marlene, can you explain this then
Sure.
to us?
What it is, it's just a combination of two existing lots. So that dashed line is currently a property line. That would go away, and lot 15A would be the combination lot.
Okay.
I move it, Mr. Chair.
Second.
Any further comments from the staff?
We can recommend your endorsement.
Okay. Any discussion?
Just a question. Is this residential B, is this 40,000 square feet zoning?
It is, yeah.
So this is a 33,951 square foot lot,
Yep.
so it's still not buildable?
That'll be a lot use determination if they decide to ever ask for a building permit. We don't necessarily know why they're combining these lots. There may be a house on one of them already.
We don't even know that?
We don't even know
Okay,
that.
then I can't.
All right. Any further discussion? Okay, then, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries.
Very smart.
Now, now we will have our public hearing, one of two. The applicant is Brian Jasinski and Alchemy Farm Neighborhood Association, modification of a definitive plan to exchange 454 square feet of land between Lot 002 and open space located at 2 and 223 Solar Way, East Falmouth. Mr. Secretary.
38 notices were sent to abutters by certified mail on April the 17th. 3 returned.
3 returned, 1 returned, no receptacle, no mailbox, I guess.
Gotcha. And 33 signed receipts were returned.
Okay, thank you. Is there someone here for the applicant? Mr. Bunker?
Yes, I'm Mr. Tom Bunker with BSS Design. We did a survey, prepared the plan for Mr. Jasinski. He owns this Lot 2 on Solar Way. This would normally be an approval not required plan, but because there's an existing special permit out for this when this area was developed as an open space subdivision or planned residential, the lots are undersized. We had to go through a full hearing for this. What we have is on this Lot 2, he built a house not very long ago, and there's an existing foundation in this location on the lot. And in order to make use of that, he wanted to trade land between himself. The lot now comes up, this is his corner of the land up here. He wants to get a piece of the land from the association. So we prepared this plan, swapping equal areas, 454 square feet here. So the new line is 10.5 feet from the existing foundation on both sides. And 454 square feet here that's unencumbered. The septic system is not closer to anything. Unencumbered by anything that will be conveyed to the association. So it's an equal swap of land, no change in the overall area of the open space or the lot areas. This line is drawn as a continuation. It's parallel with Hatchville Road, so that open space is not getting narrower at any point. We see this as certainly a good thing in keeping with the area, keeping with the nature of the neighborhood, and you'll be able to utilize this foundation. And actually, if that were considered to be a nonconformity, it'll be decreasing any possible nonconformities. That's what you have.
Thank you. Does the board have any questions for clarification from Mr. Bunker? Yes.
I just have a comment that if this subdivision plan had come in initially with this configuration, we would have had no problem with it. In fact, I would comment that the subdivision probably should have come in with that configuration in order to avoid creating a nonconformity. But I don't have any problem with this.
Okay. Anyone else for questions or clarifications from Mr. Bunker? Okay. Then does the staff have any comments about this?
No, if it didn't involve open space, you'd be seeing it as an A&R.
Okay, I have one question. I assume then that the association had to agree to the swap.
Yes, we filed a letter from the association, the chairman of the association, with the planning board.
Okay,
Yep, we have that.
okay. All right, then there's no further clarifications from the staff or any referrals. No referrals were necessary. Then are there any further questions from the board about the proposed land swap? All right, then at this time I will accept comments from the public concerning the issue at hand. Yes, sir, if you'll be kind enough to take the microphone.
Yes, I'm Joe Hackler. I'm with the Alchemy Farm Neighborhood Association where this property is located. And I agree with Richard Latimer. If we had been thinking the thing through when we actually brought the plan here in the first place, we would have done exactly what Brian is proposing to do now.
Okay. Further comments from the public? Well, then, I will close the hearing, and it will take a motion to take it under advisement.
So moved.
Seconded.
Discussion. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. We have the option of moving this forward without further delay if the planning board chooses to do so.
I forget the words. Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we move forward with
Did you waive your standing policy?
waiver standing policy for this procedure.
Okay.
And I will second that.
Okay. The policy for the planning board is to generally take it under consideration and consider it, these types of things, at a subsequent meeting. But under certain circumstances where the issue is quite straightforward and doesn't really warrant any further discussion, we have the option of waiving that and proceeding on the same night. Any further discussion on on waiving our procedure? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain. Richard, you ready?
Yes, may I make a motion, Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir, you may.
I move that the planning board vote to approve the application of Brian Jasinski and the Alchemy Farm Neighborhood Association under Article 25, Planned Residential Development of the zoning bylaw of the town of Falmouth for a plan entitled, quote, Plan of Land at Hatchville Road and Solar Way in Hatchville, Falmouth, Mass., close quote, BSS Design Inc., dated March 29, 2012, scale 1 inch equals 60 feet, with the following findings, waivers, and conditions. Findings. The above plan seeks to modify the definitive plan and special permit originally approved on January 10, 1996, and recorded at the Barnstable County Registry of Deeds in Book 10193, page 174. The applicant is requesting to redraw lot number 2 to allow for the construction of an accessory shed. The planning board finds the exchange of 454 square feet between the owners of Lot 2 and the open space commonly owned by the Neighborhood Association to be acceptable. Waivers. No waivers from the planning board rules and regulations are hereby granted. Conditions. 1. Prior to definitive plan endorsement, the applicant shall submit an electronic copy of the above referenced plan as a portable document file format.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is a public hearing. The applicant, Green Cove LLC and Falmouth Air Park Homeowners Association. Modification of a definitive plan to exchange 15.32 acres of open space located at Lot 18 Timothy Bourne Parkway and the Falmouth Air Park designated open space, East Falmouth. Mr. Secretary.
140, excuse me, abutters notices were sent by certified mail on April the 17th, 2012. 6 returned, unclaimed, 3 returned, unable to
Deliver.
to forward.
To forward.
128 signed receipts were returned. And this was also published on April the 17th and April the 24th in the Enterprise.
Okay.
As long as May the 1st, sorry about that.
Okay. Thank you. Is there someone here for the applicant?
Mr. Chairman, Eric Turkington, representing the Falmouth Air Park Homeowners Association and Green Cove LLC. I think our request this evening would be that you take no testimony or evidence in this matter for 2 reasons. First reason is that it turns out the Cape Cod Commission has some jurisdiction here. Because we're dealing with two parcels of land, one's about 26 acres and one's about 23, but the total is over 30, which triggers the Cape Cod Commission review. Even though we're not proposing any buildings or basically any change of any substantial nature, but the law is the law, and the commission has jurisdiction. So until they've dealt with it, it's premature for this body to take evidence or comment. The other reason, of course, is it is a modification of a special permit. It would require a 2/3 majority of your board to grant it, and you're going to have a different board in 2 weeks. At least one of your members, Mr. Medeiros, won't be sitting, and thank you, by the way, for your service to the town. But you'll have a new member, and the new member should have the opportunity to be part of the whole process so that they could vote on it in the end. So for those two reasons, we would ask you to not take any further action on this.
Okay, then, are you then recommending, Mr. Turkington, that we not even open this as a public hearing because we've done that already and read the notification and so forth? Do you want us to simply continue the hearing? Is that correct?
Right, continue it before taking testimony
Understand.
from anybody.
Understand. Okay. I believe we can do that, and
Mr. Chairman, I
let's
make a motion.
oh, 1 second.
Yeah, Brian and I recommend that you, for right now, you continue this to May 22nd. That's your next meeting. The commission will clearly have not finished their work by then, but by then your time frame will have stopped, and we'll have received word back that they are going to assert their jurisdiction. And then at that time, we can give you a longer-term continuation date. So for right now, because we have not received official word back that the commission is going to assert their jurisdiction, and because your time frame is still that June 24th deadline is still in place, we recommend that you just bring this back up at your next meeting on May 22nd for an update from us about where it stands with the commission.
So moved, Mr.
Okay.
Chair.
Second.
All right, I have a motion to continue the hearing until May 22nd, and a second. Further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Turkington.
What it is.
The next item on the agenda is the planning board discussion of the wind energy systems draft, which we have been working on for quite some time now. And so we have the latest draft from the staff, excuse me, dated 5/1/12. And the purpose of tonight is to discuss that draft and to make comments to the staff, to alter it, change it, add it, take things out, whatever. So I'm guessing that the best way to do this is to go right through it from the beginning. So under purpose and also definitions, I'll entertain comments from the board. Pat?
The last time we saw that for purposes of holding a place under accessory, it was suggested that 100% of the power be used on site. This time it has been changed to 75% of the electricity produced by the turbine be used on site. And I think we discussed that it really didn't make much sense to have 100% used on site. It could be required that, but that did not allow for the various permutations that might happen over time with the particular property. So my thought is that 75% makes a lot more sense that it be used on site. What we still don't know is, we had a discussion about feeding into the grid, and we don't know how these work if they produce excess at any time. We know that it draws from the grid if they need excess power beyond what's produced by the turbine. But we don't know whether when they produce excess, it is required to feed into the grid or there is some other mechanism. And that was a question that we had raised, I believe.
Good. I'm going to interrupt that train of thought and ask everybody to go back up to the previous paragraph under purpose and see whether anybody has any comments about that paragraph before we get into the definitions of which accessory is the first. Does anyone have any comments on the first paragraph under purpose? I do. I would like the planning board to consider the elimination of the word small in the title and also in the first paragraph. I believe that we are addressing turbines of several different sizes. Whether or not we restrict them or deny them or whatever, I would like the board to consider that. I would also like I was looking at my notes about the purposes of what we had discussed earlier, and we had considered language such as to protect the public and minimize negative impacts. I don't know whether we had discussed that or had decided to drop that or not. We'd also decided to consider whether or not to include in the purpose to supplement power sources for town residents and businesses. Although at the time when I did bring that up, I said to supplement town power, the town of Falmouth power, and we pretty much ruled that out at this point. But I thought we might consider adding the supplement power for town residents and businesses. And then I need some help, Marlene, on the third suggestion that I would like the board to consider, and that is the town has a policy that was brought up at town meeting. I'm sorry, it was not brought up at town meeting. It was brought up at the candidates' night, and the candidates running for selectmen this time were asked whether or not they were familiar with this policy that has been drafted by the town concerning energy and I can't remember the title of it, of this
The
drug.
Climate Protection Action Plan?
That must have been it, the Climate Protection Action Plan, thank you. That's way too much for me to remember. Anyway, it seems to me as though Climate Protection Action Plan.
And that's the town's response to the Green Communities Act
Okay,
by the
Climate
state.
Protection Action Plan. Okay, and I was wondering whether or not the planning board would like reference to that in the purpose. So,
But we have to open this all the way.
oh, yeah, sure.
Open meeting law, yeah.
I don't know why that closed.
Well, people were talking.
Oh, okay. That's all right, but the open meeting law requires us to welcome everybody in. Oh, there was conversation out there? Okay, if, in that case, we should have asked them to stop, and that's my oversight. I did not hear that. It was probably, is it still going on? Thank you very much, Mr. Drummy. So those are the things that I would like the planning board to consider before we move on to the definitions. Rich?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I agree with everything you said as far as modifying, or I don't disagree with anything you said, except for the verbiage, protect the public and minimize adverse impacts, because that is a given for anything we do, whether it's wind turbines or zoning
Right.
lot sizes or anything else. I think that's superfluous in my view, and it tends to detract from what the real purpose of this, which is, I think, is fairly stated, to accommodate wind energy systems as accessory uses.
Okay.
Primarily, and by doing that as accessory uses only, I think we are addressing the concerns that have been raised largely as far as protecting the public and minimizing impacts.
Okay, thank you.
Just my
I must
take
say
on that language.
Yes, Jim?
Well, that was pretty complicated, everything you said there, blending a couple of things, so I'd like to, we'll see that the next time we get to talk about it after we see it in writing, correct?
Oh, yeah, it'll still be in draft form.
Yeah.
I can reiterate.
No, I'll just wait, we'll get another bite at it, so I don't have to comment on
Right,
it. I'll just
okay,
wait.
okay.
I do have a thought on accessory.
Oh, wait a minute, I'd rather not move into
No,
the
I'm talking
definition.
about in the purpose. I'm talking
Oh,
about.
oh, okay, in the purpose,
when
okay.
accessories- As accessory uses.
I-
I'm talking about the word in the first sentence right there,
I understand,
that word.
okay.
I'm just wondering, we don't really have parcels zoned this way now, but if we had an industrial zoned parcel, where its primary use could be a wind turbine, why wouldn't we want it to go there, if it could meet all the other requirements? I can see why we wouldn't want it in a residential area, but an industrial zoned piece of land, I'm just asking that question.
Comments?
Well, I
Doug?
believe we raised that at the last couple of meetings as a possibility.
Yeah.
Right, we did, but we haven't addressed it, and this kind of closes the door on it.
Yes,
Okay.
it does.
Because once we do accessory and then we adopt the 75%, it's gone.
Yeah, okay, Rich?
I don't see it necessarily that way. I think what we're doing here is we're taking a little baby step here, saying what we're doing is we're going to accommodate small wind systems that are accessory uses. Right now, is it part of any industrial zone that we can generate wind for sale to the market? I don't think so. So I think that would require an amendment to the industrial zoning to begin with. And if we were going to do that, well, then we would naturally, as housekeeping, amend this bylaw. So, you're kind of putting the cart before the horse there, Jim, when you say, you know,
Well, this would be making it so we can't put it, right now, we don't have anything,
we can't now anyway,
right.
because it's not a permitted use. So if we should amend the industrial zone bylaw to permit the use, then we would, of necessity, come and we, as housekeeping, would amend this.
So,
Yeah, Ken?
I agree with Rich in the fact that if it was an industrial use and we said that in industrial properties, we could allow this, that can happen. I think it's kind of like baby steps, like you said. You're building your case.
Before we put that exception in here, we'd have to get it in the zoning bylaw for industrial zones.
Doug?
so will this not then be intended for a comprehensive townwide plan? Or is the industrial treated separately?
I'm sorry, I don't quite understand what you're saying.
I'm just getting from Rich that the industrial land doesn't need to be dealt with here, because it'll be dealt with separately in an industrial zoning bylaw?
Yeah, every zone has permitted uses and
Right.
accessory uses and by special permit uses, and so you deal with it by zone.
Right, but so, I guess I thought we were gonna be doing a comprehensive wind zoning bylaw that would include all areas, but I guess I'm just trying to get clarification.
You're saying that you think this is an overlay of the entire town?
I was under that impression.
Right. Is that fair to say, Marlene, that that's the way it is at this point?
Yeah, so, let's talk a little bit about how your zoning code works. And you're both saying the right things here, but it is a little confusing. Yes, this bylaw, if it's adopted, would apply townwide across the zoning map. Later on, we'll get into specific zoning districts on the second page. But yes, so Jim's point is correct, that the board at the previous couple meetings, your policy as it stands right now is that based on the information we have today, your policy is that you're gonna move forward at some range for accessory turbines only. And yes, that closes the door to any by right uses until the zoning is changed. So when you get more information or better information later in the future, or technology changes or whatever happens, we can't tell right now, but town meeting can always go back and change this when you feel that you want to make a recommendation for a by right use. So this is purposely, based on your previous discussions, limiting turbines to accessory uses only. So you cannot have an empty lot with nothing on it but a turbine.
And also, I think it's important to realize that we haven't finished our discussion of the definition of accessory yet, so
Right.
it's coming up, Jim, and you'll be able to comment on that also.
Well,
you know.
accessory kind of implies it's not primary, so I mean,
Right,
that's the
that's
point I
true.
was trying to
It
make.
does.
I mean, it's less, there's a certain
I think it
bending
goes,
of the language, you can only go so far.
I think it goes
with the word
beyond.
accessory.
Yeah, it goes beyond implying it, I think. I think it actually defines it. Rich?
If our zoning bylaw for industrial zones said that you could put in solely build a wind generating system for sale to the market, if it already said that, then we would have to have exceptions here for the accessory. To say, except for in industrial zones where this is, but since we don't already have that,
Right.
we don't have to put in that qualification.
Okay.
But once, or if and when we decide that we do want to rezone to allow that kind of use of industrial land, then we would put that into the zoning bylaw for industrial zones, and we'd have to write it into an amendment to this section.
Okay. Is everybody, Pat?
I also think from a practical standpoint, we already decided we don't want anything larger than 660. If anybody were going to put that in as a primary use, they're going to want to see the larger ones for the greater production of power to sell into the market. They're not going to expend the money just simply to have something there no larger than 660. It doesn't make any kind of economic sense, in my viewpoint. The other point is, too, we currently, on our current bylaw, we currently have it as accessory. And as Rich said, we're taking baby steps. I think practically, if we were going to look at something that we really want to see passed, I'd be hard pressed to say that town meeting is going to pass something that allows a primary, essentially like a wind farm, usage on a piece of property here. So I think we'd be asking for trouble if we put anything in greater than an accessory use.
So do we title this non-industrial wind energy systems?
Actually, if I could speak to that, because Brian and I want to make the same recommendation that Ralph brought up. Because we are defining small, large, and utility scale, our recommendation to you is that on the next draft, the title just be wind energy systems.
Can you go along with that? Okay. Okay, well, those are my suggestions, and I've gotten feedback, and we'll be able to if the staff incorporates those suggestions in the next draft, then you'll be able to pick them apart. Yeah, Jim?
I'm still not clear. I understand what Richard was saying, that we don't have enough, but I thought that's what we were doing, that we're writing a bylaw where the wind turbines are going, and if we don't have a vision that they're gonna be allowed in some kind of land as a primary use, that's what I don't understand. I thought I think of them as an industry, and I think that they belong in an industrial location. We may not have the land for it now, but that's where I think they belong. And if we can't address it, right now, we're talking about a policy across all zoning districts. So I think this is the appropriate time to talk about whether we could have them in an industrial zoned area as a primary use. I don't know if we're not going to talk about it now. We're kind of not addressing the entire issue. That's my thoughts.
We do that now. Doug?
I'm in agreement with that. We talk about, we can always come back and change it later, but I don't think it's that easy. It's not like changing a light bulb. We have to go back and get 2/3 vote at town meeting to make every change. And usually those changes come up when we realize a need arises, and then the zoning change is tied to the specific use, and people are reluctant to make those changes.
Yeah, Pat, did you have something? Oh, Rich?
As Pat has pointed out, I think quite succinctly, it's going to be hard enough to get this across now as it is. And it'd be much easier to get this across now as it is without what you're talking about. And it would be much easier later to come back in with a single focused, specific plan for wind generating as primary use with specific locations in mind than to just throw it into this as a potential. That's the kind of thing that would kill this now, whereas if we come back later with something specific, saying, well, here's what we're talking about, and here's where we're thinking of putting it, that would be a much easier sell, and it would be a specifically focused article on just allowing for that wind-generating capacity as a primary use on it, standing up or falling on its own merits, not bringing down the rest of the article.
Creating bylaws is practicing the art of the possible, I would say. If, like Jim has said, we don't have the land now, then why create a bylaw that's already impossible? Why allow something that's not possible now? Because if we don't have the land now, last I knew, there wasn't more land being created. We're not in the volcanic zone or anything like that, to be silly about it.
Yeah.
But that's where it comes. We don't have more land. There's another thing that I'd like to bring up just as a question. That was simply a comment. But when you asked, Ralph, do we want to reference the Climate Protection Action Plan in here? I'd have to say I don't know, but I'd like to question that because we tend not to reference things that may change. I don't know whether that will change, how long it will be around. So I'm not so sure, without knowing what this is and how long it's been written for, what the vision on that is for longevity, I don't believe I'd like to see that referenced in a bylaw. Because then once you reference it, anybody can reach out and pull these things in and we'll say, see, it's in your bylaw. So I do have a bit of an objection to that.
Okay, well, maybe, Marlene, you could find out a little bit of details about that Climate Protection Action Plan?
Yeah, we can give you some more information.
Okay.
I can tell you that I don't know of any other plan reference in your zoning bylaw, but it's not to say that it can't be done, but it is, I think you should definitely, one, all have read a copy of it to make sure it's something you want to fully incorporate, and which I can get for you, and two, to give you some more of the details on, how often it's updated and.
At least you could give us a synopsis of it. I mean, I don't know how long it is, how lengthy it is, but I mean, it seems like a climate action protection plan is going to have quite a considerable longevity. The climate, our climate is changing, and if we want to protect it, I can't see any immediate actions changing the way it's being protected right now. But anyway,
Yeah.
I understand your point, Pat, and so it's a good one. And so if you want us, if asking the staff to get us a little more information helps us decide that, are you okay with that, or do you want to just drop it?
I think also their input, Ralph, as to, as Marlene said, we don't have a reference like this elsewhere in our bylaws.
Yeah.
At least she doesn't know of any, I don't know of
Right.
any. Because if it is a document that has some legal authority and is not going to be changed by, oh, well, next year we're going to insert something more, there might be some validity to put it in. But if it's a document that can be changed, it's
Well,
not a good idea.
All right. But recall that we have the local comprehensive plan, which we're working on, and that's also a plan. And I know there's a lot of reference to the plan by people who deal with issues in the town. So I just thought it might be appropriate. It might be appropriate. I'm sure that this board will decide that appropriateness the next time we take a look at it. Anything else on the first paragraph then? Then we can move into the definition portions, of which Pat started to talk about the definition of accessory. I believe the word "of" has to be added to the the end of the first line in accessory, 75% of the electricity. And then we'll continue to discuss the definition of an accessory. Bob?
I still have a problem with percentages, because to me, that means monitoring and enforcement. And how you're gonna enforce, or how you're gonna know if somebody's using 75% of it. And also too, let's say it's a summer home. You're using it 3 or 4 weeks of the summer, and you've got a windmill there, and it's generating electricity all year
Oh, you have a
long.
wind turbine there.
Wind turbine.
Thank you.
yes.
We have windmills right now.
So it's 20, you may use 25% of the electricity. Or you have a huge chunk of land, and that allows you to put a larger wind turbine on, and that gives you, maybe 100% of your electrical usage for your residents, but 75% of it can be sold. I just don't see putting a percentage on this.
Okay. Other comments on the percentage? Doug?
I don't understand the reason for any percentage either. And it's an accessory by its own nature. If it's not the primary, if it's not the only thing on the lot, then it's automatically an accessory, for one thing. Another thing is, if you have a volume of business, say you're in the bark mulch business, and you sell $1 million worth of bark mulch a year, and your wind turbine produces $50,000 worth of electricity, but your electric bill is only $20,000, I don't understand why we would want to put a percentage attached. I don't think it's necessary, it's arbitrary, and I think it precludes a lot of potential wind development, so.
Other comments on the percentage issue? Yes, Ken?
My comment on that is the fact of an accessory unit or accessory use is less than the primary use. That's my opinion of an accessory. So whether it be 50 or less percentage, I think it shouldn't be a profit-making use. Accessory should be less than profitable. I mean, don't mean that they can't make a profit, but it shouldn't be like you use 25% of the electricity and the accessory use creates 75% profit on that use.
What is your objection to them being?
Accessory, my definition of accessory is it's less than the primary use of the property, whether it be wind turbines or whatever. That's all. So.
But you're using the word profit in there, and so I'm wondering how would you add that word somewhere in here in the definition?
I'm just stating what I've heard. Accessory use is less than the primary use of the property. And in most circumstances, whether it be commercial real estate, residential real estate, anything you have that's an accessory use is generated as less than the primary use of the property, whatever that be. So.
Right, but how do you equate the production of electricity versus using the property for bark mulch? I can't.
Okay, I'll give you an example
I can't square that up.
of my opinion. Are you trying to make a profit on this wind turbine?
Well, I think you're trying to cover your expenses.
But if an accessory use means you're gonna cover most of the profit, the cost, and maybe make a little extra, and that's the point. It's not supposed to be a profit. Because you gotta understand, when we create these bylaws, it's not just this one person. We're trying to make a bylaw that creates businesses from coming in and taking over properties and creating profit out of buying this lot, that lot, and the other lot, and throwing up wind turbines. That's a part of this bylaw process. So accessory use means the property that you're using is gonna use most of the electricity created. That's what I mean by accessory. So other than that, go ahead.
Okay, yeah,
Go on.
all right, go ahead.
Problem
Rich.
with using this dollar approach is that the price of bark mulch may well remain stable and may in fact decline over any given period of time. Well, we know that the price you can get for energy is going to go up. So if you're saying well, okay, it can't be more than 50% now, but now that would be based upon what the applicant shows you as his current figures. But now, he doesn't can't start claiming any more for bark mulch or whatever he's selling. But meanwhile, he can sell that electricity for a lot more because the price of energy is going up, as it will. Now you're getting into real enforcement problems, real thorny enforcement issues, even more than simply counting kilowatts. I mean, that to me is an issue that we're not prepared really to deal with. I think, my question would be to Marlene is, do we have a general definition of accessory in the bylaws anywhere, in our zoning bylaws?
You do have a couple of definitions for accessory, and they do rely on percentages. They rely on percentages that are of things that we can measure. So square footage, an accessory structure is a certain percentage less than the primary structure. The accessory height, an accessory structure's height is a certain percentage of the primary structure's height. So, you know, we struggled with the same thing too about, we need to be practical, and we need to, if we're gonna do this, we need to make it clear to the applicant what's expected of them, and we need to make it clear of the boards, whoever's issuing a special permit, what it is they need to require. And setting it as a percentage of profit or cost is very difficult to do, because then you're relying on essentially self-reporting. Energy is metered. So if you're if you're thinking about issuing a special permit for a property, you can say, well, can you bring in copies of your utility bills? And you can write a condition into a special permit that says every year, like you do for contractors' yards, we enforce your conditions every year for contractors' yards. Every year, a report with the copies of the 12 months of utility bills has to be submitted. So because it's metered, it's easy to measure. And yes, your percentages are arbitrary, but that's okay, because just about everything in zoning is arbitrary. It's based on what your citizens want. That's what it's about. So you decided an accessory structure or an accessory apartment is no more than 30% of the size of the principal use. So that's why this definition is tracking along the other things that we define as accessories, whether apartments or structures or.
At the bottom.
Okay, just a second, Richard. I'd like to make a comment about that, and I understand what you're saying. But when you give me, it is my understanding, the way I look at it is, if you give me a summary of your power bills, I'm not going to be looking at the cost of the power. I'm going to look at the consumption of wattage.
Yes, correct.
And that is what, whereas, and that is something that is not part of making a profit. It's different than that, and that's what I'm having a problem with what you're saying, Ken. So I'm just saying that when we're talking about percentages, we're talking about consumption of something, not the cost of something. And I'm going to go over here, Jim.
Yeah, I think it actually has to be measured when they build a building. They come in and they know exactly what the capacity of the energy usage is. It's part of the code process, and they have to measure it when they put it in the total watts. I think that accessory use, whatever percentage we decide, it can't be greater than the peak use the property could ever use, because then it's not. But I'm not sure if 91% is, whatever the percentage is, I'm not sure about. I just know it can't be greater than the existing buildings, permitted, engineered, numbered kilowatts that are used on a place, or it becomes primary if it's greater than. That's my simple thought. I have no trouble with profits or selling. I think that if they decide to let one use go dormant for a while, you know, and the other one runs during the winter, I don't have a problem with selling off extra energy. That's good common sense.
It seems to me that as an example, if a business is operating and has a certain energy requirement, and let's say that business decides to downsize. They want to downsize. Are you going to then say that they're not complying with the, with our bylaw because they're not using, they're generating more revenue or more energy than what they originally we thought they were going to? I have real issues with all of that. Yeah, Rich?
I don't think we have a problem socially or any other way with generating energy. I don't see anything wrong with generating energy. I mean, that's a good thing. The more energy we can generate with, renewable resource like wind or solar, the better off we are as a society. And the generating the energy per se isn't what has any adverse effects that we want to regulate. We do want to make this an accessory use, at this point, solely an accessory use, simply to prevent the opening the floodgates to, wind farms and that sort of thing. But we want to be somewhat flexible. I think Jim's idea of capping it at maybe not exactly the maximum capacity, but 10% above the maximum capacity, projected capacity, so that there's a little bit of slack in there. And like Jim says, if during the winter months that there's a slowdown in the business and they can keep generating that wind and sell it back to the grid, who's hurt by that? Who's hurt by that? I think that's, but from the get-go, it's an accessory use because it's based primarily on the maximum capacity of the business itself.
It seems what we're trying to do is prevent a primary use, and it's right there on the systems prohibited.
It's right where?
Number 3, we're prohibiting anything that's constructed, installed for...
Where the primary use of facilities...
Where the primary
right.
use is electrical generation.
I understand. It is there.
And
We're still discussing the
Yeah, I know,
percentage here.
but this keeps coming back to
Right.
that primary use, where,
Okay.
to me, it's already been taken care of later in the draft.
Right.
And also, too, I don't know, you can design a building to use so much energy for heat and mechanical systems, stuff like that, but once you put people in it, that goes out the window. I mean, my wife and I don't use a whole lot of electricity, but when the kids come home, it's double or triple what we would use. So it isn't like you can build a structure and it's X amount of kilowatts per year it gets
Right.
consumed by that building. That isn't something that I think you can calculate.
When I have relatives visit, I turn the heat down, and then they leave sooner. That's not to be in the minutes, please, Melanie.
But what Bob just said...
And please, I would appreciate it if you wouldn't put that in there. That was just,
but what Bob
I'm
just
sorry,
said is-
we have to laugh now and then.
But
Rich,
what Bob
wait,
just said is-
wait, hang on, Rich. Are there any other comments here, but because, Rich, you've had a chance?
Well, I do,
Yeah,
I don't care who goes first.
Doug, go ahead.
All right, so I'm not disagreeing with setting limits and standards for residential areas, but I have a fundamental problem with stopping businesses from putting up a wind turbine as an investment. Why would you do that? It's contrary to the whole debt metering concept and trying to encourage renewable systems.
Okay. Yeah, Pat?
The base decision from which this was generated, that we originally made, I think, with one of our first discussions, is that we did not want to allow turbines' primary usage of a power plant here. And that's why I spoke to that originally, that if we're not going on the very large ones, then principally, they're going to be used almost as accessory. I could be wrong, because I don't know what the power output is and the usage. When we're looking at this, is saying, okay, we're probably not going to go anywhere beyond 660. And by the way, that also is suppositional at this point. We haven't made those decisions. But we did say, no, we don't want to go to the industrial-sized ones like we have at the treatment plant.
Right.
Because they are causing too much trouble.
And we
right
don't
now.
know how to figure them out.
And we don't know how to figure them out. So at the point at which the technology comes up, and it might be 10 years, it might be never, I don't know, then we can look at modifying this. But right now, we're saying, no way do we want any usage for a principal use of a power plant. And that's what we're trying to avoid here.
Rich, I think you were next.
Yeah, okay. What
Sure.
Bob just said illustrated it perfectly. And if we, first of all, it makes things very simple, very easy to do in the permitting process, to say, well, okay, here is your facility, this is your primary facility, this is your business, this is what you're doing, and this is what your maximum energy demand is. So therefore, you can have, and I would give them a little bit more, 5–10% more. Therefore, you can have an accessory wind generator that will provide exactly that amount and will give you a little bit of slack, okay, for in case something unusual happens. All right, so now, that's how you're starting your business. At that point, we are enabling a business to go forward and to have a purely accessory use of the wind. Now, we know when they do that there are going to be times when they're going to not be able to use all that wind. So why should we not want them to sell it to keep them in business? We're concerned about the general welfare of the town, keeping energy costs down across the board, and if they're selling energy back, that's less money that's being spent for other fuels by NSTAR, keeping people employed, which is another important thing we're doing. As long as that is simply designed to be an accessory to the design of the business, that's all we need to be concerned about. We can periodically check on that if we want to by just saying, well, let's see what your kilowatt use was and how much you used and how much you sold back. Not in dollars, but in how many kilowatts. And if we see a trend with anyone that's really going, way out of whack on that, well, then we can question whether they're using that as an accessory use or whether they're in violation. But I think as far as setting it up to begin with, I think that's all we have to do. We have to just simply say, it's going to be your projected demand versus the capacity of what you're going to build for a wind turbine, and we will check on you from time to time in terms of seeing what your actual usage turns out to be.
All right. What if a person comes to us and says, I'm going to start a business on a vacant piece of property, and I'm going to develop my business in phases. I'm going to have phase 1, and I'm going to have X number of square feet, and my energy requirements is X. I'm then going to do Y, and then I'm going to do Z. And I want to put in a turbine that meets all of the requirements that this bylaw will put forth, but I want to put in a turbine that's going to cover my energy costs when I finally finish building my business. So I don't want to say to that person, tell us what your requirement is for phase A, and then you can put in a turbine for that side, because they're not going to change the size of the turbine once they put it in. And what if the person says, I did this business plan, and I got phase A and phase B in there, and it seems to me as though that's the max of where my business is going to go. So now my big turbine that was going to include phase C is cranking out too much energy, according to your bylaw. I just don't want to see these percentages. They just don't make sense to me, and I agree with Bob.
Well,
And no, wait a minute, Rich, I'm going to entertain comments from somebody else first.
I'm all set.
Ken?
The point that I want to make, this is the last meeting that I have to say about this. And the initial business incorporation as an accessory use, granted, we came up with this latest bylaw says 75%. I don't know if that should be 75% or 60% or 50%. Just like you said, whatever this board comes up with, I think that the energy should not exceed X amount, whatever that would be, of the initial business, whether they're gonna be a retail business, you know, a development business, a manufacturing business, whatever. There should be a percentage that they shouldn't exceed that point. And just like you said, if they're gonna start out small and they know they're gonna get there, well, that's fine. But there should be a percentage, some percentage of X, that they don't exceed when they start, so that way when they expand, they use up that percentage. Because somebody could open up a shed with a lawnmower repair shop that only opens, you know, and uses one light bulb that puts a 400-foot turbine. And if we don't put an X factor in there, they could sell back $4,000 or $5,000 a month to the grid until they expand. Well, they don't ever have to expand if they start. Once the turbine is set, I'm just saying that the board should consider that there should be an X factor. It shouldn't exceed this amount, whatever that be.
Okay.
That's all.
Yeah, Doug?
Why can't we just say it shouldn't exceed a certain height or sound decibel level or impact an area greater than X? And limit those factors and not concern ourselves with the profit that a person may make on a particular project. We don't want to stop business from making money. That's just counterproductive. I mean, I think we got enough tools to regulate if we go through the long, drawn-out process that I think this will be. So that's my feeling.
Yes, Rich?
Well, we're doing that anyway, Doug, but the point is, Ken, if somebody says, well, they may have a business plan, okay, fine, that everyone can dream, everyone can have a plan, but what we want to know is what you're getting a permit to build now, and whatever you tell the building inspector you're going to build for your project, or for your shop, is what we're going to base your wind generating capacity on. If you get bigger later, well, you'll be able to afford to upgrade your wind generating capacity, if that's what you want to do. Or you can decide to wait. Wait till you do get bigger, and then start generating wind. We're not here to foster anybody's specific, business plan, and we're not here to particularly hinder it. We're here to best protect the public interest and do it in the most efficient and economical way we can devise. And again, the most efficient and economical way we can devise is, again, looking at Jim's idea, is basing the size of the turbine on the projected, documented demand of the facility, of the business, when they start out, period. And we can check on that. That's something that would be easily checkable by periodic review of the wattage that they're using, the kilowatts that they're using. Keep it simple, stupid. And that's as simple as you can get, and it isn't stupid.
Bob?
I tend to agree with Doug. I think if the turbine meets all these specifications for setbacks and all this other stuff, it should be allowed. It's just like when you buy a boat. Boats are rated for X number of horsepower up to X number of horsepower. Mine's rated 70 to 140. I put a 70, somebody might put a 140. I go slower, they go faster. But the capacity of the boat will hold both. So if the land can hold one turbine of one size versus another, someone might want to go to the max. So I don't see why we couldn't allow them if it meets all the other criteria.
Pat?
The 75% usage was a result of our prior discussion. That doesn't mean we have to hold with it, but we also said maybe 50%. I think we can settle on a percentage of overage use from the original calculation that would still make it an accessory use, so that wouldn't be questioned. It allows for growth of the business. It allows for potentially some generation to earn back what you put into the turbine. And I think we should add on this averaged over a year. because then that makes it really clear that you're asking for the average power usage of a year, and it's averaged over a year as to what you're getting from it. I really, really have a deep-seated problem with allowing what is almost a carte blanche. Well, if you can do it within setbacks or noise limits, then go to it, create your power plant. And maybe it's 75%, maybe it's 95% of what's being produced on your lot. I think we have enough understanding now about, as Jim said, we don't have the property currently here to allow that sort of thing. And I think we have enough understanding as to the problems that can be created, and we don't understand the why of the creation of the problems, that I'm having a lot of difficulty with saying, go to it, and grow as much as you want to, and provide as much as you want to, and make as much money as you want to on this. I do firmly believe we have to have some limitations in place, and that's our job as a planning board.
Marlene, I'm going to ask you a question to help me clarify something. I reviewed the notes that I took when I read what other towns have done, and I have to say that what Doug brought up is a whole new ballgame here, because I don't recall these other towns defining these in their bylaws that the use of these would be accessory. Am I wrong on that? I don't recall reading, and in my notes,
Yeah.
I don't have the word accessory under any one of those towns. Am I wrong on that?
I think there were definitely a lot of towns that allowed power plants, that allowed wind
Right.
power plants.
Right.
Because remember, we were reading ordinances and bylaws from across the country.
Right.
And so a lot of these places were out west that we were reading,
Right.
where they are specifically regulating wind farms. That's the whole point.
Right.
In the Massachusetts town, they don't come right out and say it, which is why we want you to do it, because we want you to be very clear about what you mean and what's expected here. But if you actually go through all the steps of some of the Massachusetts towns' permitting process, it indirectly brings you to the fact that there are accessory limitations.
Okay, the notes that I specifically reviewed were on, and I wanted it to be on the Cape.
Yeah.
I reviewed Truro,'s,
Yep.
the Cape Cod Commission's, Bourne's,
Mm-hmm.
and then also something out of Rhode Island.
Right.
And do you recall whether they actually, in any of the Cape Cod towns that have adopted a bylaw, do they refer to accessory use?
I don't have them
I
verbatim memorized.
I don't either.
But I don't, let me put it this way. Brian and I ran the exercise using the Bourne bylaw. And if you actually sit down and go through the steps of what's required, and you look at their zoning map, they're essentially saying none of these are allowed anywhere. So instead of just coming out and saying none of these are allowed anywhere, they're going through this convoluted setback procedure
Yeah.
that when you overlay with their zoning map, it's very, very, very limited, almost to nothing.
Okay.
So that's what we don't want you to do. We want you to tell the people of Falmouth what exactly you mean and what exactly is allowed in clear English. That's why we don't want it to be, we don't want it to be, maybe.
Right, our last meeting, I was talking about encouraging people who might have an electric car to have a small wind turbine on their property so that they could charge their car with that. And it would be a small one. And I certainly, I don't know whether Bourne has cut out that possibility also. I didn't apply it to all of their properties and so forth, but the last thing I want to do is to tell the people in Falmouth, we're gonna make this so restrictive that you might as well forget it.
Right.
That's the last thing I wanna do. Ken?
One thing that this brought up a point that I want to make home to this board. I know people in this town that have residential lots, agricultural lots, I believe maybe not industrial, but business lots that are unbuildable. They are not buildable lots. Today's standards and zonings, they cannot put anything on those lots. But if you create a bylaw that allows other than accessory use, these lots technically could then become available for wind turbines, which then would be primary use because they couldn't build anything else. They could put a tower on it and generate energy, which is good for everything else, but it's not necessarily good for the town. So understand, that's why I truly believe we need accessory use only, and it will stop all those loopholes. We don't need to create loopholes that create more, whoever your authority creates to be, whether it be the zoning board of appeals or this board keeps the permitting process. You don't need more loopholes to create problems. So it needs to be accessory use in that respect alone.
Jim?
I almost don't want to talk too much because I find myself agreeing, Richard and I agreeing a lot tonight, which is pretty unusual. But,
That's a
Well,
good thing.
Yes,
there is a
that's
reason
good.
we have you at the opposite ends of the table. You understand that?
The only thing I wanted to mention, I agreed a lot with what Pat said too, but I think to measure anything but peak capacity of when they build a building, there's only so many kilowatts that thing can use at full speed. And that's something we don't have to check, it's a permitting process, we don't have to go back and measure, we know that on the building permit, and we don't have to run around and check on it. If they add more equipment, they gotta get a building permit, so there's an automatic check on it. So I think we gotta look at that as how we measure what the peak capacity, whether they're actually using it or not. I don't know, I don't wanna get into judging what they do, but we know when they build that building and how many horsepower those motors run and everything, it's all designed and they know exactly what the maximum energy they could use. And I think that's what we should, whatever our percentage, we should look at that. Because then we don't have to check on them again. If they pull a permit, they have to apply for it. We got our own controls in already, simpler to manage. That's the only.
I'm not sure that if you add equipment to the interior of a building, that you have to get another building permit.
Any electrical outlet you do, absolutely. You put a piece of electrical equipment in,
Oh, yeah, you have to have
You get
an
electrical
electrical inspection.
no, you
But
have
you
to
don't
pull a
have-
permit. You actually have to pull electrical
Sure you
permit.
do. Yeah.
And then they inspect it. I'm very
Is that
familiar
true?
with it.
Oh, yeah.
It's part of the process.
If you increase the,
Even in your home.
Yeah,
But you can have 50 plugs in your initial construction and
But
buy
that's what we
equipment.
measure.
You don't have to get a permit to buy a
And you
piece of
can put a
equipment,
400
No,
amp
no,
service
but-
in.
as long as your
service is
construction is
there.
already done.
But
so
your
if you
service
put
is there.
200 amp service into a building,
That's it.
and you're only using 100 now, and then you add another 100, you don't need to get another permit just because of the equipment that you put in to consume
No,
the extra
but
100.
we'll know the capacity when they first build it. Not that they're using it, we'll already know. It's measurable.
Oh, so you're saying that you give them, that the special permit is granted on the maximum
Maximum what they could ever
of
do.
what they could ever use
Yeah.
at the time?
200
By their
amps.
original
Okay.
design.
200
okay.
amps, 24/7,
Yeah, okay.
I guess.
Yeah, Rich?
The undersized lot question is easily resolved by making it very clear that this accessory wind turbine must be on the same lot as the primary use.
He's just
So-
saying if we were to allow it to be not accessory.
He's saying if
Non-accessory.
we drop the word
The
accessory.
accessory, there was a question about
Oh, yeah.
accessory use. I'm like, that creates a huge issue.
Okay,
Right,
what,
okay.
That's all.
what, I think, what I'd like to do now is for the board to decide a couple of things. Number one, do we want to continue to require wind turbines as an accessory use? I would like to vote on that and get that off the table for the staff. Second, and they recommended. The second thing I'd like us to do is to decide whether or not we want to stipulate a percentage or use some other kind of language. And I'd ask, if you want to use some other language other than a percentage, then I'd like for whoever proposes it to say the language that you'd like for the board to consider, okay? So, at this point, I'd like to say, is everybody, we don't need to vote necessarily, but is there pretty much is there a consensus that we will continue using accessory as part of the purpose and as a definition?
Call for a vote.
Can we have one
Yeah.
comment
Yeah,
before we vote?
all right, go ahead.
Because I still feel like there should be two sets of rules for residential areas and business or industrial land.
Okay, but accessory wouldn't apply to both of those, in those cases?
Not necessarily under these definitions of accessory that we're bantying about.
Well, we haven't finished the definition of accessory yet.
Okay.
It's accessory, basically is gonna say, it's not the primary use of the land, okay? That's what we're gonna say.
Right.
I mean, that's the beginning portion of the definition of accessory. Whether we add percentages or not, that'll be our next issue. So if you want to vote, okay, then those in favor of continuing to use the word accessory in the purpose and also as to be defined.
Aye.
Please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? One opposition?
I'm still, it all depends on how we come up with this.
The definition,
Yeah.
the definition.
Yeah.
We left that out.
Can I make a statement?
Well, wait a minute now, wait a minute, we've just voted, and I have
5.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in favor, 1 opposed, and 1 abstained?
Staying, yeah.
You're gonna abstain, all right, well, then it passes. And we've made that decision. So now let's talk about a definition, more specifically, the definition of accessory. Pat has suggested that you say that we add the electricity produced over 1 year. Bob and Doug have issues with a percentage, and Ken wants some limitation in there. So if you're not interested in a specific numbered percentage, then give me some language that you want to put in there. Yeah, Doug?
Lot size, structure size, setbacks, and, impact to, impact area, I guess.
I don't quite understand how that's going to play into the, how would the accessory definition read under what you just said? How would it read? Look at this
Doug, can I jump
accessory.
in?
Look at this definition of accessories in front of us,
All right, why don't you go on to those guys?
okay? All right, Bob, have you got a suggestion?
Yeah, for the purposes of this article shall mean that the electricity produced by the wind energy system shall be utilized by the principal uses located on the same lot.
Okay. You're going to have to say that very slowly so that we can copy that down.
Okay, I'm crossing out.
Well, you're starting where?
Okay, for adding the word accessory for the purposes of this article.
Yeah,
Shall mean that.
and then
And
after
then
that is all
scratch-
new?
No, scratch all that out.
You scratch all what out?
No less than
Okay,
75%.
Yeah,
So after the word that, the electricity produced by the wind energy system
oh, okay,
shall be utilized by the principal uses located on the same lot.
okay, all right, so you're crossing out the word no less than 75%.
Right.
So it would read, for the purposes of this article, shall mean that the electricity produced, can you include over 1 year in there? Would you agree to that?
We don't even need that.
Yeah, we don't even need it.
Okay, by the energy system shall be utilized by the principal uses located on the lot. Okay. All right, there's one suggestion. You followed that, right, Doug? What he said, what he's
Yeah, I
done there?
understand what you're trying
Okay,
to
but, yeah,
define
we're
the
trying to stay with
accessory.
the definition of accessory. Yeah, Ken?
If you wanted to leave the accessory use as it is, what I would suggest for this board is if you had residential is this, agricultural is this, and you wanted light industrial or commercial put in the bottom of that, with the exception, something to the fact that the exceptions to these zones are this.
Okay?
So you could leave your general residential or agricultural this, and if commercial zone, you wanted to give them 50%. Or you wanted to give some other zone some other percent. You could put that right in there, and that would take that whole zone out and make it less complicated. So people would understand that if we're talking about an industrial zone, that they could use it for more purposes. That'd make it easier.
Okay.
And I think that might make it easier to understand for other people in the town
Okay.
as well.
Yeah, Rich?
I would simply take what Bob's language is, that reads, for the purposes of this article shall mean, accessory for the purposes of this article shall mean that the electricity produced by the wind energy system shall be utilized by the principal uses located on the same lot during peak hours of demand. And I would add that this shall be determined at the time of the application, based on the applicant's submission as to the projected energy use of the business and the projected capacity to generate power by the wind turbine, and this shall be periodically checked against by review of the owner's utility records. That keeps the regulatory mechanism at its very simplest, and it allows the most flexibility within the purposes of the bylaw.
I'm fine, oh, I'm
Yeah,
sorry, it's not my
go
turn. I'm fine with this in residential areas, but in business areas, accessory should simply mean it's not the primary business on the lot.
In business areas, not industrial areas.
Well, and industrial.
Because we have business zones, industrial zones, residential zones, agricultural zones.
In those areas, I'd say the definition of accessory is it's not the primary industry on that lot.
Okay.
And it's a simple, you don't have to be complicated.
I'm having a hard time getting my head around that one.
You gotta define it, though.
Let's see.
No matter what you do, you gotta define it, so whoever is the permitting authority, they can clearly have a definition of, as to what they can do and what they can't do.
Yeah,
That's all.
that's a circular definition. That's the problem I have with that, it's circular.
Right.
But by the suggestion that Jim came up, that I've just refined, it's Jim's idea, I think it avoids circularity, it's very clear, it's very set at the outset. Now, I think as far as residences go, since you cannot sell any product from a residence, you would simply say, okay, I can see where you have a different definition that says shall be all be utilized by the principal use on the lot, or sold back as for a credit, although now I don't even think that's legitimate in terms of a residential use, since a residential use means no business use. So,
Bob, do I understand that what you've said here is that, in other words, you can't sell any of it to the grid?
No, no.
For the purposes of this article, shall mean that the electricity produced by the wind energy system shall be utilized by the principal use located on the same lot.
Yeah, it
So
doesn't,
all-
it doesn't say
doesn't say
how much
all
of
of
it.
it.
It doesn't say all, it doesn't say a percentage, so, as long as whatever that use, primary use is, the energy generated is being utilized by that.
Shall
then
be,
what
but it
is-
doesn't say all of it has to be
No,
utilized.
it doesn't say all.
time out here.
Shall be utilized by the
Well, let me
principal
speak as a lawyer
use.
here. If you use that language, it does say all.
Right.
And anybody aggrieved by anybody else's use of that is going to come in and it's, inviting litigation. I think you're either going to say all, or you're going to further qualify it, which is like what I've just done with Jim's concept, is at peak periods of peak demand.
Yeah, so you have some qualification on it.
Yeah.
I'm thinking right now that what we need to do here is turn this, Marlene's heard it all, and she's shaking her head, and
No, she's not.
maybe
She's
we let the staff come up with something that we can consider the next time, because I think we've gone to the max on the first
Accessory.
definition in this purpose section here. Do you want to continue talking about this before the staff takes a crack at it, or not?
I have one more comment for the staff to take a crack at,
Go ahead.
because we've been looking at this from the point of view of how much is going to be used by the principal user. If you turn it on its end and say, how much are we going to allow to be sold into the grid? We've not taken a look at it from that point of view. The way it was stated, 25% of it could be sold into the grid, or 25% of it could be used for the expansion of the power needs on that particular property. So that answered our objection to begin with a week or two ago of, okay, what about growth of the property? Well, what about trying to make a little bit of money on it without allowing a power plant on the site? So, but the reason I raised my hand on this is that we have not looked at it as to, well, how much are we going to allow to be sold back into the grid instead of how much has to be used on site? It's just a different way of looking at the same math.
It just seems like we're trying to control how much money somebody can make off of something, and people putting solar panels in, one of the big incentives is you meter can roll backwards, and you get the tax credits that are sold to the power companies. That's income that is generated by you having solar panels, and it's an incentive for that. I mean, that was the tipping point for my wife and I when we decided that that's what we're going to do, is we're going to have an income from those solar panels.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Rich, make it brief, okay? What? Just make it brief. I want to move on. I want to move on.
I agree with Pat that it's much easier to measure kilowatts than it is to measure dollars, much fairer. But the only problem is if you have that as the standard, that's an ongoing item that you have to monitor. Whereas if you just, from the start, defined it as being, in terms of the capacity, the relative capacity and the relative demand that's existing on this one lot, and then you can admonish the applicant that, well, once in a while, we're going to check up on you, but it won't have to be every month. I mean, you know.
I'm not advocating what I just said, Rich.
Oh, okay.
I just said, we haven't looked at it from that point of view.
No,
because
but
certain of our members wanted to look at it as, let's allow this to be used as a money-making option.
Okay,
Can I make one quick?
yeah, go ahead.
What if you do all the math and figure out that this manufacturing welding place, which uses a boatload of electricity, and they get to put up one that fits on their lot, and it's handling their needs, and they go out of business and get taken over by a farm stand? Who knows? I mean, probably won't happen, but are then we gonna make them take down that turbine, which fits on the lot and meets all the parameters?
make them sell it, why not?
Oh,
Just
to
a thought.
decommission it and sell it is a huge expense.
Right.
All right, well, anyway,
Just the last
that's the
thought.
last comment I'm going to accept.
Okay.
Okay, that's it.
Marlene,
That's it, folks.
Are we moving on
We're
to
done with the definition of accessory for tonight, okay? And that's the first time I think I've ever done that, and as the chairman, but I think we've reached our saturation point.
Yes, we are at
We have
saturation
reached our
level.
saturation point on that. All right.
agree.
Now, we don't have to cover everything in this draft tonight, but we're still under the first portion of it. Does anyone have anything that they would like to add to the definitions or changing the definitions of what we've looked at here. I believe the wind energy, the utility scale wind energy system, which is, has question marks after the 660 kilowatts. Was that the Cape Cod Commission's definition? Okay. So that's their definition. That doesn't mean we have to use that as a definition. Does anybody want to change our definition of utility scale wind energy system? Is everybody, Jim?
I might like to see an example of exactly what a 660 kilowatt turbine is, before
Okay.
is there one we could go look at and say that's what we're saying?
Less than half of what
Is that
we
what's
got.
in Hull?
Yeah, Mass
Mass Maritime.
Maritimes is a 660, and
CUNY.
we have, the town of Falmouth has permitted one. It's not been constructed yet, but, so you can
Mass
look,
Maritime's fine, I can go look at that, I see
Yeah.
it all the time, I can go look at it, okay, that's what we're talking about.
but if you want to see the schematic diagrams, they're at the Board of Appeals.
The real thing is be
Okay.
better for me.
The town turbines are rate
1.65 megawatts.
1.65. So that's like almost three times that, right?
2.3,
Almost,
More than,
2.3,
Almost 3
2.5,
times.
yeah.
almost three times that, okay. Yeah, the town is 1.65 megawatts, right? Okay, anybody else want to dabble with the, or have any things, any comments about the definitions? Is everybody happy with the fact that the kilowatt is 1,000 watts? I mean, do we need to?
I don't think we could change that.
Yeah.
No, I mean, is everybody happy with the fact that everybody knows that?
Okay.
So I was thinking we'd add, yeah, no, I can't, you're right, I can't do that. If I could do that,
I think you're scaring me now.
if I could do that, I would not be the chairman of the planning board, I would be sitting on some island down in the Caribbean.
Umbrella drum.
I was just thinking about adding the definition of a kilowatt is 1,000 watts, but because we do refer to it a lot in this thing, but if you don't want to do it, it doesn't have to be, but that was my suggestion. Okay, we're going to go on to the next section, which is applicability and exceptions. We'll start with number 1. And the people in the audience don't have
Read that one.
yeah, they don't have, and neither does the television audience, have any idea of what we're talking about here, because we don't have it up on a screen or something, and we haven't distributed copies of the draft, and I can understand that. Ken, why don't you just read it, and so everybody knows what we're talking about.
Any provisions or requirements of this chapter to the contrary notwithstanding, number 1 states, no wind energy system as defined shall be erected, constructed, installed, or modified, Jesus, without first receiving a special permit from the Board of Appeals, SPGA, as outlined herein.
Okay, comments on number 1?
unless Richard has a
What is
comment about it, I'm
SPGA?
fine with it.
Okay.
What is SBGA?
All right, that's my first comment. We need to define, you need to say what, you need to, instead of saying the Board of Appeals, you need to say, from the special permit
right.
granting authority, comma, parentheses, SPGA. You have to spell it out the first time.
It is actually spelled out the first time in the bylaw.
It is not,
It's from-
not
I
in
mean,
this
the
bylaw.
whole bylaw it is.
and this
And
is a component.
remember, this is Article 34 of your entire book, and this is something that is used
Okay.
in the previous chapters.
And
You mean in 240? Okay, I still think that it's a consensus that we'd like it spelled out here.
Okay.
It's certainly my desire. Other comments on number 1? Ken?
the SPGA means Special Permit Granting Authority.
Right.
This board has not determined if the Board of Appeals will be that granting authority. That's the one comment I had about this particular portion of our bylaw.
Okay, so do I. I have a question about that myself. I also have another question. In looking at bylaws from other towns, they also require a building permit to be issued, and that, I would have thought would have been in this paragraph.
We, the zoning doesn't, I mean, if we said building, we would be saying building permits, I thought a million times in the zoning bylaw. Anything that's gonna be constructed, yes, needs a building permit. Just like you need a special permit for a garage of more than 900.
So you're saying it's understood?
Yes.
Right.
All right, then I'll cross that out.
Mr.
All
Chair.
right, now, I would like to entertain comments and thoughts on who is going to be the SPGA. Rich?
I don't see in here that the Board of Health is mentioned, but the Board of Health is going to have a lot to say about these. If you read the Enterprise today.
Yeah,
they
but
are-
that's not, they're not gonna be the permitting authority here, unless you're suggesting that they are, because we are talking specifically about who is going to be the permitting authority for this particular
Well, I
bylaw.
think we have to, we can't ignore the Board of Health.
I didn't
because-
say we did.
Because one of the, in fact, when we start talking here about the,
We can ask for, Rich,
public
Rich,
outreach
excuse me,
area.
we can ask for a reference from them if you want to in the bylaw, if we want to do that. But I want to specifically stay here, who is going to be the permit granting authority?
well, under this, we should be, because it's our baby. But the Board of Health, we say a referral to the Board of Health, the Board of Health can stop this completely, just the same way as the ZBA could stop it for a building code violation. So-
Well, that's true, I'm not saying that,
It
but
goes
the
beyond a
building,
mere
the
referral.
Board of Health, we're not dealing with health issues in our bylaw. We have decided that from day one.
I
That the
know.
Board of Health is going to deal with the health issues, and we're going to deal with, the size, the vibrations, the flicker, all of that other stuff. That's what we're dealing with, okay?
Well, I think-
To have some comments from down here?
Well, wait
Pat,
a minute, I
excuse me.
wasn't finished. On this, no energy system as defined shall be erected, constructed, installed without first having received a special permit from the Board of Appeals. Well, does that mean we want to say from the planning board?
I'm asking for opinions on that, Rich.
I think we do.
You want to see the planning board as the SPGA. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know.
For the permit issued pursuant to this, provided, however, that the applicant shall first have appeared before the Board of Health with approval for,
I'm very sorry, but I need to interrupt here. Remember this is Chapter 240 zoning, so it's being enacted under Chapter 40A of MGL. You only have two choices. It can only be the planning board or the ZBA. If it's
Okay.
gonna be in zoning, nobody else can do it.
Understand.
well, then it has to be.
That's understood.
It has to be either you or the zoning board.
That's fine, okay. All right, next. Jim, I'm going to go with you.
I think it should be the planning board.
Okay?
Special permit granting authority should be the planning board.
We agree again.
All right, just a minute, Rich. Okay. Bob,
I agree with that.
you want the planning board. And if, when you're stating your preference here, you can say why if you want to. We've got time. Pat?
I want the planning board. It is a new bylaw that we're putting in place, and we need to know firsthand immediately what the problems might be.
Okay, Doug.
I think we should stick with it, since we're the ones working on it.
Ken, it's going to be your last vote before you step down.
The one question that I think that the board should be the controller of it. But the question that I need the board to understand is, do we have all the other things and the interactions that the ZBA deals with every day? I've been on this board for 3 years, and this board does not deal with the permitting issues and the Board of Health all the time and all that. These are all the things that I agree, but understand that there's a lot more in this one than anything that this board has ever had to deal with on a special permit. That's all.
Okay. But we do grant special permits.
I'm just,
And we do get referrals from the Board of Health, and we send referrals to the Zoning Board of Appeals. And occasionally, I guess we get a referral from the Zoning Board of Appeals now and then. So, Ken, what would be your druthers then?
well, the first off is, it's beyond what we're doing at this point. Your setbacks, your criteria. You've got to have far more standards than you have now. This board is not apt to construction and all that are going to pertain to, let me go back to this, the erection, construction, installation, modification of this towers and/or wind turbines.
So you seem to think that the Zoning Board of Appeals has more expertise in those areas than we do? Is that what
At
you're
this
saying?
point, absolutely.
Okay, so you're voting the Zoning Board of Appeals
Yeah.
for the permitting, granting,
Yes.
for the granting permit?
I believe so.
Okay.
With,
Just a moment, just a moment.
Go ahead.
What?
with the guidelines set by this board.
Okay.
Appropriate.
All right, so I
guidelines.
have 5 and 1, and I am going to vote for the planning board. So I've got 6 people that prefer the planning
Well,
board.
then it's 6 and
one
0,
for-
because I'm done, buddy.
I know. All right, now, I'm going to, I'm last to vote, and I'm going to say that I agree with the fact that we're developing the bylaw, and I know for a fact that as this thing moves forward, that we can't expect the Zoning Board of Appeals to do the type of research that we've done on this. And also, we can't expect them to do the deliberations that we have done and are going to do between now and fall town meeting. So I think it's very appropriate that the planning board be the special permit granting authority. Rich?
Yeah, I think the way the Board of Appeals comes in should be mentioned that there will be a referral to the Board of Health. There will be a referral to the Board of Health on every application.
Referral from the Board of Health.
Yes, we're going to ask the Board of Health
Right.
for a referral.
I actually penciled that in later.
So that should be part of the procedure.
Okay.
Under criteria for review, I think we're going to need some more specific substantive provisions. Those are on the draft drawing board right now?
They are.
Okay. I just want to be sure that they were there.
Okay, we're going to go to item number 2, and we are going to stop this meeting by decree, since we have no correspondence, right?
We don't.
Okay. I'm in favor of setting 9 o'clock as a deadline for deliberations on this tonight. Is there anybody that wants to go beyond that?
There is some information I need to give you.
Okay, we still have 20 minutes, and I'm just going to go do number 2. Do you want to give it to us before
No.
we do number 2?
No,
Okay, all right, then I'm going to ask Ken, would you read number 2, and then we'll discuss number 2.
Wind energy systems having a rating capacity of 300 watts or less, or building-mounted wind energy systems less than 8 feet above the building height as defined are exempt from the provisions of this article.
Okay, so what we are saying here is that small wind turbines are pretty much exempt from this. Is that
Yeah,
what we're saying here?
These are the very, very, very small ones that would like power a summer cottage.
Okay, or charge your electric car or whatever.
Right, charge
Okay.
your battery.
All right, comments on number 2?
I
Ken.
just- That made me, the question, a 300 watt system, what is the one at the high school? Does anybody,
That's a 10 kilowatt.
Kilowatt.
which is,
10, that's
10,000.
10,000.
That's 10,000.
oh, okay,
10,000.
never mind then. That scratches it.
Okay.
Yeah,
And-
this
and-
will power a refrigerator.
Like on you see on a 30-foot sailboat, the little
Yeah.
thing, that's not much more than a 300. Okay.
Right, and
Okay.
Jim, before you comment, I'm going to ask Bob to repeat the comments that he made after attending that seminar where there was this discussion of wind turbine versus solar panels. There was a, well,
Yeah.
you go ahead and tell me what they said.
If I can
forgot.
recall,
It was something
the-
about the size, it didn't make any
these
sense.
small systems really do not outproduce solar panels. And mainly because they're not sited properly, that they're too low. There are too many obstructions that cause turbulence. So they're pretty ineffective. And
Well, I could have sworn you gave a figure. You said if you want to do any less than so many watts, forget the turbine, go solar.
yeah.
Do you remember what that was?
I think it was, I don't want to
Okay.
guess at what I said. I'd have
Okay,
to
would
look
you
at-
mind, looking that up again
Yeah.
for our next meeting?
Okay.
Okay, that'd be great. Yeah, Jim, sorry.
My question was height. Would these small turbines still be constrained by the 35-foot height limit we have in our regular construction? Then I have no problem.
Yeah, so 35 plus 8 is, what,
Yeah.
43? 43 feet above, 43 feet is how high they could go?
The average
No,
house would
no.
be like 26 feet, plus 8 would be 30.
I thought you said 35,
35 feet is the ridge line of the highest structure allowed to build in town.
that's what I'm saying.
So just because it goes on the roof doesn't have to be on the peak. I was thinking it can't be.
No, it could be on the ground and just not go higher than that.
Or-
No,
It
it's a
doesn't have to be
building
on the building.
Right,
Well, it says
right,
building
that's what I'm
mounted.
saying, that-
No, that's an or.
Yeah.
That's an or.
Say that again then, please.
So it's a very small wind turbine having a rated capacity of 300 watts or less, or a building-mounted wind energy system.
A building mounted, okay.
Or.
Or.
So if it's a building-mounted, either way, it has to abide by the 35-foot height limit. If it's building-mounted, it may be more than 300 watts, but it still has to meet the 35-foot.
With 3.5-foot blades.
Okay.
Exactly.
So in other words, the building would have to be 35 less 8 feet to beat the maximum height of the building.
Yeah, but
Everything has to stay below that 35
35
foot
feet, right, yeah,
ceiling.
okay. So the building could be
the average
27 feet,
26.
27 feet.
26 plus
Yeah,
8 feet.
okay, yeah.
34 feet.
Yeah, right.
And you're still.
Maybe it's.
Wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a
Put a
minute.
reference in there, subject to the building code provision that restricts, just put a reference, subject to,
The zone, it depends on your zoning district, so generally it's 35 feet, in industrial, in LIB it's 40 feet.
Yeah.
So
Right.
it depends on your zoning district.
Right,
And
okay.
that's in other parts of your zoning bylaw.
Yeah, okay. Jim, you had something?
Well said.
Oh, okay.
how you say building height as defined.
Okay, so then how do we all feel about the paragraph number 2 then? Are we happy with that? Okay, then we're gonna, Marlene, what did you want to bring to us?
Okay, so Brian and I were talking about how to proceed with getting this out to the public and getting some feedback for you. And we would like you to consider, we've never done this before, so it would be kind of an experiment here, but consider maybe having a series of public hearings about this, maybe about a quarter of the bylaw at a time. And the reason we're thinking that is kind of to check in to see that we're not like going down a really wrong road here. So, we said we would start, vetting this out publicly in June. I mean, all of these meetings are public, obviously, and people are following along. But it may be the case where we could do this, where you develop the bylaw to a certain point, we have a public hearing about that. You get that feedback, you write kind of the next couple sections of the bylaw, have another public hearing, get some feedback about that. So we don't go through, I mean, you can see how labor intensive this is. So we don't want to, bring you all the way through to the end, go out to public hearing and find out that what we've done is just not acceptable. So that's, usually, of course, you have a bylaw that's, drafted from beginning to end that you then have a public hearing on. We want you to consider this. There's drawbacks and benefits either way, but we think that this is a complex enough, and it's gonna be a lengthy enough bylaw that breaking it up might be the way to go. And it'll also kind of help control the chairman and the hearing process, so you're not jumping around from, okay, here's our main purpose, and then jumping into, paragraph 3B, C, Roman numeral I.4 in some technical detail. So, because the real detailed stuff is coming soon, our question is, do you want to have kind of a preliminary hearing, maybe in mid-June, late June, kind of about your purpose, about your accessory use, about the stuff that you've all been grappling with, to just check in to make sure that this is what your citizens agree with, before you invest, a lot of time crafting the rest of it. And the other thing that as soon as you have an idea on your summer vacation schedule, if you could let us know that, because if we are going to do a series of public hearings, obviously want to shoot for days where everybody's gonna be here. So if you're gonna be out of town in July or August or whatever, please get that to us so we can kind of work out a tentative schedule for you for these hearings. And if you have any thoughts right now about whether or not you want to do a series of, break this up into a series of sections and have the hearings independently, and then at the end, we would of course, after it's been submitted to the warrant, you would have a hearing on everything, just like you always do, probably in October.
Okay. All right, so first of all, could everybody get to the staff by the end of this week, your tentative vacation schedule? And if you don't know it, then tell them you don't know it, okay? Secondly, I'm going to entertain comments on whether you want to have some mini hearings on portions of the bylaw, or whether you want to wait. Jim?
Well, I think we should have it, but I want to make sure, we really can't just take the first half and, open that. We have to really open up the whole thing, because some of the things in the first half are predicated by the definitions and everything that follows. So it's really hard to segment it out. I mean, we'd have to make sure that when they come into reviewing the whole thing with specific emphasis on the first half. But, we're all saying, well, eventually, setbacks, heights, and clearing are gonna fall into it. We may be holding on to our understanding based that that language is coming there, so we gotta just make that clear.
Okay. Bob?
I'd like to see it broken up.
Pat?
I think it's extremely wise to get public input as we go along.
Ken? I'm not sure I'm going to ask you. I'm going to ask you.
Move on down to Doug. I would suggest that it should be broken up, but,
Okay.
because there's a lot of it
All right.
to cover.
Will you come and be in the audience?
If available, I would definitely be here.
Okay. I'm gonna hold you to that. Doug?
I'm thinking maybe we should have public comment at the end of our discussions while we go through the process, rather than wait.
Instead of public hearings?
Well, to start with, and then we can have public hearings when we get something more
Yeah,
cohesive.
that's not a bad idea, as long as we advertise it, so that we have some dedicated people that are coming to these. But if we're going to,
I think
try
we're
to
missing-
open it up to the public more, which is the intent of what Brian and Marlene are talking about.
We're missing out on good comment that could help us along with our discussion,
But
probably.
without having a hearing, we're not properly taking that comment. So without having a noticed hearing, that's unfair to people who don't come because they know the procedure and know that there's not going to be an opportunity to talk.
Yeah.
So
Well, that could discourage people from coming.
what could discourage you? No. If you say we're having a public hearing, we're going to take public testimony, well, then people will come if they want to. But if we don't say that, then they won't come, because they'll know that our normal procedure, discussions like this, is we don't take that.
Right.
Well, that's why I'm saying, currently, we're discouraging the comment, because we're not accepting comment.
Well, that's true, that's right. We are limiting our discussion, because it's, right, Frank, at the end would be okay, but comments during our discussion.
No, I don't mean
would make-
during, I mean,
Yeah,
This
right.
is a
comment
legal,
period
Right, I know.
at the end.
this is a legal question. We cannot take testimony outside of a public hearing. Because if we're going to hear from any segment of the public, it has to be opened up to everybody. Everybody has to be invited, but specific, not by notice specifically, except the butters in some cases, but everyone, the general public has to be invited by general publication to come and talk with us.
I think that's true, because, Doug, I think
Oh, I said that.
what he's saying is true. There is nothing to prevent an unsolicited comment to be written to us, to a letter. But if we would say, are there any comments from the audience, we are then soliciting comments. And so I think there's a difference there that we have to abide by. Ken?
See.
And the fact that, what you gotta understand is that our staff has not had a chance to talk to every member of this board about the issues that we've drafted and created. This is their first chance to say, okay, now I understand what the board needs, and redraft it. So by taking public comments, it's not allowing them to create, I mean, they're the ones with a specialty on this, so they create the new draft, like the next meeting of the
Right, okay. Well, we still have a little bit of time.
Mr. Chair, I have getting back to this article, paragraph 2, an important comment to make.
Okay,
It reads, or building-mounted wind energy systems less than 8 feet above building height, and then it says, as defined, are exempt. Building height is not defined in this.
It's defined in section 13. It's a very median average, the median grade to the ridge line, including parapets, excluding air conditioners. We have a
Okay.
very detailed
Okay,
definition.
but wait a minute, okay. So we mean the building height is the actual building height?
Yes.
Okay, now if you're in a zoning district where the maximum building height is 35 feet, and you have an actual building that is 35 feet high or 34 feet high, you cannot have one of these
That's correct.
building, okay.
Right.
All right, we want to make that very clear. I would define building height in here to simply read, building height shall mean the actual height of the building, the total height of the building, and attached turbines shall not exceed the maximum building height allowed in the zoning district. I would make that very clear here so that there's no confusion about it.
as defined in the specific, in the
the
zoning
specific zoning
district. So
district,
that's
yeah.
what you're asking to do, is to add the language in the
It's part of the
zoning
definition,
district?
it's part of the definition.
No,
So-
that changes the building height definition into 4013.
Well,
Say that again, Marlene. What are you saying?
What Richard is reading to you here would be a different definition than we already have into
well, then
4013.
incorporate that right in here and make it very clear that this is subject not to the actual building height, but to the allowable building height. And we don't mean 8 feet above the allowable building height, we mean 8 feet above the actual building height. Or do you mean that it's going to be 8 feet above the allowable building height? Because to me, this is very ambiguous, as it is written here.
The definition of building height describes from what point and to what point you measure.
Okay?
Okay, so that's the building height. It's instructions on how to measure it. So we're not talking about height limits. Height limits are a different section. That's in 67. So building height is you're measuring from the grade to the ridge.
Ridge line.
And this is saying that you get an extra 8 feet if you have it. If you don't have it, then that's understood
make
that
that very-
Eladio can't, it's understood that Eladio wouldn't issue the building permit, because that maximum building height is in place.
We're dealing here with an article, and I think we should always make it very clear. We have an article here that has definitions in this article,
I know,
and these definitions are not necessarily the same as the general definitions to which you're referring back here. So I think
no, that's not correct. Everything that's defined here is not defined elsewhere. We're being
Okay.
very careful about that. Brian and I had a long conversation. Do we pull these definitions out of this article and put them into
No,
40-13?
what you do is you just say, as defined in section blah, blah, blah of the zoning bylaw. And then it makes it very clear. Because any layperson, and even any lawyer reading this, this, as for itself, planning on going forward with the wind project, is gonna say, as defined, and they're gonna see where you have definitions here. And they're gonna say, well, building height isn't defined.
Well, I mean, we use that clause as defined consistently throughout the bylaw. It's people's
And it's always
own
helpful,
work to do
it's
it.
always helpful to put in,
If you want us to put the reference 240-13, we can do that.
yeah, that's
Okay.
very simple, that's a very simple change. It makes it very clear for everybody, and nobody has any kind of question.
As defined in 24013, is that what we're gonna say?
Yeah,
Okay. That's okay. You know, sometimes it's easier to make people understand these things. And I mean, if you give them the reference, then they can look it up themselves real easy. Doug?
I just don't want to change the definition of.
No, we're not
building.
gonna change it.
No,
Okay.
fine, no.
So going back, I sidetracked myself on the question about whether or not we want the public hearings, because I asked a question about opening
Yeah,
up
yeah,
discussion here.
yeah.
So in light of what I've learned about the fact that we can't really open it up here because it's not a public hearing, I say we should have that public outreach thing.
Okay. Sorry, was I? No, I wasn't. Okay, so, and Rich, how do you feel about reaching the public? Do you want us, would you
I agree
prefer
with the
it?
concept of having a series of
Okay.
hearings on each section
Okay,
that are duly noticed as public hearings.
okay. All right, so then, Marlene, and you got the go-ahead on that?
Yeah, and and so we'll take it in chunks. So we won't go too much farther until we have a hearing on what you've already got.
You mean this?
Yeah,
These 3 pages?
these 3 pages.
Right, okay,
right,
because, I
Yeah.
mean, we're not gonna get through these 3 pages tonight.
Right.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, motion
Did
to
you
adjourn.
anticipate that we would get through these 3 pages tonight?
I was hoping you would have settled the accessory definition.
I thought we did.
You mean the fact we dumped it back in your
I
lap?
have to say, I'm a little disappointed in that.
Mr. Chair,
But how
motion
about,
to,
how about well, we took so long to, I mean, that just sort of negated us getting through these 3.
That's okay, that's okay. This will take as long as it'll take, and we'll just keep working on it. You guys
I
are
will
doing a good
remind
job.
this isn't like we did a four-night
I-
town meeting.
I will remind this board
That was
that
well
we
done.
used to meet every week.
Yeah.
And we've been meeting every other week for a considerable length of time because the development in the town has slowed. Now, I'm going to say that, you know, that being said, we need to maybe consider meeting more frequently if we're going, especially if we're going to chop this thing up and have more input from the community. How do you all feel about that? I mean,
I
I
don't
think
have
we
a
should meet
problem.
every week till we get it done.
Yeah, I'd like to.
I feel like you were just saying that to get new people on the board.
no, you mean,
Yeah,
I
that 2
didn't,
week-
I
that 2 week
didn't, I
thing.
didn't say it until,
Now that it's filled, you're
I've got-
all set. Back to work.
yeah, that's true, yeah.
Every week till
I
we get
think
it,
you've just exposed me on that one. Rich, yeah.
every week till we get it done, but those alternate weeks shall be devoted entirely to this project,
We could do that.
unless
That's
there's
a good
something that comes
idea.
in as an emergency.
Then we limit the length of the meetings, and that would also probably be more amenable to the public. If they knew that they were coming here and we were going to just talk about that, that they wouldn't be number 5 on the agenda.
The hearings would be dedicated meetings, no question about it.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, well, then that makes sense.
Well, should we consider having hearings every other week on the wind turbines in this venue?
That's what we're saying here.
Oh, then we don't have to have a separate venue.
How much notice do we have to put out?
No,
Well,
we still need
well,
48
we
hours.
would have, we have to advertise in the
And
newspapers.
what's the notice period?
Oh, no, that's the posting.
3 weeks.
14 days before the meeting, 14 days before the hearing, not including the day of the hearing. So so 2 weeks essentially before. Now, we wouldn't advertise, frankly, we don't have the budget to advertise for a hearing like every other week.
Can't we just
But
say,
we would
we will
add
just
it-
list the dates? We're having hearings on these dates, and isn't that notification?
Well, we have to tell them exactly what we're talking about.
Right.
So if what we're covering is this material, we would advertise that for the date that the hearing opened, and then you can continue it you can continue it again and we don't have to re-advertise. And then when you're ready, and then when we get the next chunk ready, you guys are gonna have to kind of hold off on your hearings for a couple of weeks, and you're gonna have to work through it yourselves first, and then we'll advertise again for round 2, and then you can continue those hearings for as long as you want.
You can't advertise May 14th for a hearing on June 14th. You can't and then have 2 meetings in between.
Yeah.
You can't keep doing that.
In other words, but what
You've gotta
you
give
are
notice.
saying, though, is that your notification basically is to the ones who come to the first meeting, because you're gonna tell them that it's continued.
Right.
So
and
you're
that's-
not re-advertising the second time you get together to discuss the issue
Right, exactly.
with the public.
Right, it's just like any other hearing you continue. Once you meet the first time, then it gets, gets reported, the continuation gets
Right.
reported as part of the process.
So the public would actually be, someone who didn't attend the first hearing could read the minutes, or watch it, or read a summary in the newspaper,
Mm-hmm.
and know that it was being continued until the next,
Right,
okay,
right.
all right.
If,
Everybody got that?
if we were gonna have extra meetings, we decided we were gonna meet every week, they wouldn't necessarily be public hearings. It could be just an agenda item as discussion.
That's true,
Yeah.
yeah, that's right, yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
So-
you're gonna need a lot more just of your own
Yeah,
meetings to
yeah.
keep working through this stuff.
Okay, so then we need to sort of, as we discuss it amongst ourselves, we sort of have to think 2 weeks in advance as to when we want people to comment on. And actually, if we do that, we'll probably be getting comments from the public on something that's already behind us,
And that's
and
okay.
we're moving ahead, we've already moved ahead.
That's fine.
Next week,
So you have to, okay. All right, is everybody,
At least it's a start.
it's
Yeah.
a start. So why don't we,
I'm sorry, Richard had a question?
what is it?
Can
Through
we
the
meet
chair,
next
please?
week? Can we meet
What is the
next,
question, Richard?
can we meet next week for discussion of this business only?
I don't see why not.
It's election.
Oh, it's an
Yeah,
election.
you actually
That's
can't
right.
meet next
Okay,
week.
all right.
Yeah,
The answer is no, Rich.
Okay, having nothing to do with our procedure.
We are not meeting next week because it's the election, that's right. Okay.
but we'll
I'm
put
glad
you
you
on a
remember-
weekly
reminded.
schedule.
But after that, and we're scheduled to meet after that anyway,
The
aren't we?
22nd is
Okay,
your next
so-
meeting.
And that can
So-
be the discussion for that.
Right, we could discuss again, okay, right.
We
And
will.
we could just say, hey, we're gonna limit our discussions to 2 hours, and then that's it.
Yeah.
And that makes us do our homework and be specific and not dump it back on the staff.
Thanks,
That's good.
it is good.
Did you ever think that a accessory would take that much time?
Absolutely.
And it's
It's-
still not done.
It was excellent. I thought the discussion was excellent. I'm
Mr.
gonna
Chair,
entertain a
move to
motion
adjourn.
for
We're
adjournment.
5 minutes past time here.
Second?
May I
Oh.
make,
How?
I want to thank Ken
Yeah.
for his 3 years
Oh.
of service here.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. And if at some point you want to run again,
Yeah.
I got a feeling he's gonna come to the hearings.
If I can,
you
Gonna be
can.
the gas.
Yeah.
Any party comments, Ken?
no, I enjoyed it.
We got your letter, and I thought your letter was succinct and told us
I
that you
thoroughly
enjoyed your
it.
time here. And,
And I missed the fact that I won't be able to continue this, and I was like, I had a lot of things, I was like, I gotta stop writing, I'm done. And I'm gonna listen to
well, you can always pick up the phone and call your successor and tell him what you think, Because as a matter of fact, he'll probably want to know to get up to speed on this thing.
If I can attend,
As
I
soon
will
as he
continue
can.
to attend.
That'd be great.
Love that.
You
Thank you.
can send us correspondence.
With that, thank you, Pat, for reminding me of that. Meeting's adjourned.